Welcome to Full Time with Meg Linehan. I am Tamerra Griffin, joined by my co-host Meg Linehan. And we are standing on the field of CPKC Stadium right after the Orlando Pride claimed the NWSL Championship with a 1-0 victory over the Washington Spirit. Meg!
It didn't work at all, but we're here. We're on the field. It's incredible. What a game.
That game. The championships have just been getting better every season, and I think this game in particular, for so many reasons that we will get into in this episode, set incredible precedents. Like, there is no going back. There's only bigger, and better.
Yeah, I think especially being in the stadium, right? Having this moment in CPKC Stadium. I started my season here.
Full circle.
Finishing the season here. So I think, there's a lot to talk about, and it's just been like an incredible week overall.
Truly, we have had some incredible conversations throughout the week. We have incredible video for you, so make sure that you're following us at TA Fulltime across social. But in this episode, we are going to be featuring conversations with Melissa Etheridge, who sang the National Anthem before the game. We also had a great chat with Kansas City current midfielder Lo'eau LaBonta about what it means to be hosting the NWSL Championship here and what this says about the women's game moving forward. So buckle up. We have a lot to discuss, including that crazy game itself. We're going to, of course, be getting into that. But real quick, Meg, what is your top level takeaway of this moment right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think I followed Marta around after final whistle, taking photos with her mother, who was present for the game. I think that moment was just so special. Marta cursing, right? From the, it feels like Marta's moment in a lot of ways, but also I think the message that we've gotten all week from the Orlando Pride is this is a team effort. I think it's just for Orlando to finally reach this moment after the season that they've had. I hope they party well tonight.
Yeah, I mean, Marta was rushing us out of the press conference because they needed to party. But we're going to have our own party in this episode as well. So we're going to take a quick break and dive straight into it. Stay tuned. All right, Meg, we need to break down this epic fairy tale ending, but not fairy tale throughout game. But before we do that, let's talk about what happened before we even got to the stadium, which was FanFest. It's only getting bigger and better. And there were so many shows this year, totally different from what we're used to.
Yeah, I mean, I think the championship just keeps becoming more and more of an event, right? And so there is this sense of you've got to go bigger, you've got to go better. But I think having so many former players around too has really changed the scope of things. And so, to have Kristen Press and Tobin Heath and Sam Mewis doing things on stage, obviously the concert, but Kansas City, I mean, last year in San Diego, I think the scale was a little bit bigger. That stadium is bigger, but this one felt, I think, honestly, like a little more approachable, a little more like, I was not walking through that FanFest being like, okay, I need to get out of here. I thought it has been really funny, I think, talking to some players this week who were around in the early days and remembering what 2013, 2014, 2015 looked like as opposed to what everything KC offered this week.
Yeah, it definitely felt like the vibes per capita in FanFest were higher than I've ever experienced in the last 3 years that I've been covering the league.
The traveling fans too, like Orlando's fans greeting the team on the buses was a really cool moment. Spirit fans everywhere. I mean, they traveled so well. They had the wall here in KC in the stadium. So I think that made it really special too, because neutral site, I think, is where this league probably needs to stay for a really long time, just to allow people to have some logistical planning around an event. But I mean, I'm going to think about that Orlando greeting for the buses for a while, because it felt very loud very quickly.
And even though they didn't travel, honestly, shout out to Kansas City Current fans, because there was waves of purple, teal, and yellow with some cherry blossom accents throughout that FanFest. I mean, Temwa Shawinga was out there signing autographs. Every time they mentioned her name in the stadium, you knew exactly where you were just from the crowd reaction. So just the outpouring of support, even for those neutral fans, was huge, and I think speaks a lot to what Kansas City has been able to accomplish this season in terms of the sellouts consistently throughout the season. It was really, really special. And of course, then we all just filter into the stadium for the game, which Marta could not have I mean, she said she could not have dreamt of a better ending, but it was definitely not pretty on the way there.
I mean, I know we'll get into the game, but I feel like people have been asking like, oh, like it was such a fun game. And I'm like, probably from like a crowd standpoint, it was fun, but I think when you're watching it with a more analytical eye, I mean, it was just a very choppy game, a little physical. I'm sure we will get into the refereeing elements because I feel like both teams are going to have complaints, which, I mean, that maybe is the sign of a well-officiated game when everyone's got a complaint to go through. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it just feels like after last weekend's semifinals, which were so good and so epic. And I think you go into a final, teams are going to be a little bit cagier. Yeah. Washington, that first half, felt like the stronger team. And then Barbra Banda.
Yeah. I was impressed by how early Washington was able to create chances. I definitely think that they made it their mission to try and get on the board in the first half, especially against a team like the Pride. I think that's the way that you have to go. Yes. And Kouassi, shout out to Rosamund Kouassi because she was playing with zero fear.
Right.
Sometimes almost a little like not enough fear because she was getting crunchy.
Yeah, she was getting crunchy. There were definitely some jokes of like maybe the takeaway for her next year is like you don't have to play defense that much. Like and I think there is value to that of maybe setting the tone and getting that first tackle in. I mean, Lori Lindsay talked to us about that, right?
She did.
There is power in that first sort of crunching tackle, but I think it forces the ref to have a response, and then we saw the response, then we saw the response, then we saw the response, and yeah, there were a lot of elements of that physicality maybe interrupting what we expected for a flow of this game, but it wasn't a bad game by any stretch. I go back to 2017 between Orlando and, or in Orlando between Portland and North Carolina, and that was honestly probably the worst final that NWSL ever had in terms of physicality, in terms of like you're not getting into a flow whatsoever.
Something that I do appreciate in this league, the complexity, especially when you have players like Banda, when you have fast, strong players like Kouassi, how do you account for the strength and the speed?
Yeah, I feel like some stuff was getting called that was not, like, it was contact, but was it a foul, right? And I think that has been, I know Vlatko Andonovski obviously talked about this with Temwa Chwenga, right? But when you have someone who does have, like, who can run on a ball, right? And really, like, make an impact in that way, I do think Barbra Banda gets called for a little bit that is not entirely, right? Like, she's a strong player. And that's where I think you do have to get into some of these conversations of, are they being refed correctly? Like, I think that's more like a project, though, of that's a changing part of the play of this league, right? It's not like Rose Lavelle, right? Who, to be fair, can body people off the ball, but it's not the same thing. And so I do also think they have to take in maybe unconscious bias a little bit, too, right? Like, there's that element of it as well. And so, yeah, it's going to be really interesting, I think, to watch officiating on those two players in particular between Barbra Banda and Temwa Chwenga next year, because there are some where it's just like, you just penalize them for being the strongest and best player on the field.
There's so much nuance to it. And with Banda, to add even a third element, her sense of weight distribution is truly extraordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, from the earliest minutes of the game, it only took her receiving one ball at midfield against Esme Morgan in particular, and knowing that she could turn on her.
Yes.
She could body her off the ball, and like lowercase b body, not even the capital. She knew that she could do that, and that's exactly how she scored in the 37th minute.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to talk about that goal.
We do.
Because shot placement, right? I mean, there's a lot of angles on this, but I think when we get in the officiating conversation, it's tough to see sometimes from the press box, but like watching the replays, there is some contact between Lacey Santos and Angelina in the build up to that play.
For sure.
I think that's the one that Spirit fans are going to look at and be like, that's the goal that won the game, right? And it's tough because everything Banda related is perfect, right? Like perfect execution. It's exactly what Orlando wants to do, but you take that one step back and it's like, should that one have been a call? Probably, yeah.
Yeah, from my initial, when I was watching the game live, it looked like she was pushing Lacey's shoulder.
Right.
I saw mention that there was more of a neck region
it was
being targeted.
A little high. It didn't, I mean, and this is the thing, you can't ever be like, oh, intention, right?
Right.
So it's tough, but like, yes, the hand was in a strange sort of rough spot.
Yeah, initially when I saw that contact, it looked like Angelina was going for Lacey's shoulder. I've definitely heard people coming back and say that it was more the neck region involved in that contact, which obviously changes the nature of that contact.
Right, I think it was really the replay where everyone was looking at him being like, that's high, we're in the high territory. And there were, I mean, not to jump ahead into the second half, but there were a couple things late too that, you know, like I think there was, are we gonna get a VAR, you know, issue here happening? And so you don't ever want officiating to become a part of the narrative for a final. I mean, I think we've seen it in the WNBA this year, again, NWSL, and so it will be interesting, I think, to see some of the conversation over the next few days. But I also think, you know, at the end of the day, Washington Spirit put up a lot of shots.
25.
And how many were on target? Because it was not 25, we'll put it that way, right? And so at the end of the, like, you can only control what you're able to do. And I just think like the efficiency for the Spirit over the span of the game was not there. And like, yes, officiating will be a part of this conversation, but Spirit had a lot of things in their control as well, beyond one decision in this game.
Including in some ways the goal itself. I mean, we heard from Aubrey Kingsbury and Esme Morgan after the game. Each of them were involved pretty directly in that goal. Esme was marking Banda. Obviously, Aubrey was in the box. They both actually ended up taking responsibility for that goal, which I think says a lot about the sense of unity and like mutual responsibility that team has. But looking at it on replay, I feel for Audrey's sleep because that's the kind of goal that you are going to lose some REM cycles over.
Yeah, I think it's worth listening to what they actually said because also then Steph asked a question about this culture of kind of trying to take the blame, right? Because it wasn't just Aubrey Kingsbury, it wasn't just Esme Morgan. Trinity Rodman in the mix zone also was like, hey, I need to take responsibility for this game. So I think almost hearing some of like, it just kind of went down the line. So I do think it's worth hearing directly from them.
In terms of importance, it's definitely up there as one of the biggest I've played in. I think obviously you have big games in the league, in the WSL, but there's none that seem as final and decisive as this because of the playoff structure. So in terms of that, probably one of the most important, and the atmosphere was great. I wouldn't say it's as good as Audi because having experienced that the last 2 weeks, I said to some of the girls, that is some of the loudest football atmosphere I've ever experienced the last 2 weeks in the playoffs. And having played at Wembley, that's saying something. It's just because it's so tight and compact. I think sometimes the big stadiums, the noise can feel like it evaporates a little bit into the air, whereas Audi, it's just like a vacuum to the pitch of the noise, and it's been so much fun. And when we reflect, I think that's one of the things I'm going to take away. I had so much fun in this playoff journey the last 2 weeks at Audi, and that was really special. So in terms of atmosphere, I definitely put those at some of the highest in my career, and the Spirit fans who travelled today made themselves heard, and we're so grateful that they did make the trip, and sorry that we couldn't get the result for them.
So of course, after that goal, everything changes. It's near halftime. It kind of felt like both teams knew that they were going to be going into the tunnel with the 1-0 goal. But there were also questions about who was going to be coming back out of that tunnel in the second half. Speaking specifically of Trinity Rodman.
100%.
The girl's been running on fumes since August. She was clutching her back in the first half. We've been talking about how the girl needs a nap. Emma Hayes is
giving her a nap,
letting her rest. But serious questions about whether she should have gone that full 90.
Yeah, and I did ask Yona Heraldez after the game of like, was Trinity Rodman a factor in, because she's doing this kind of trailing run thing. And so I think in the most charitable reading, it's kind of a decoy use of Trinity Rodman compared to what everyone is used to seeing, right? Rather than her driving forward momentum, her taking up that sort of last runner in. But it is obviously really concerning to see Trinity Rodman with both hands to her back, right? Just kind of doing the bend it. Like, we've just seen it so many times. And at some point, I do think the question had to be asked, is she providing like her full value out on that field? Or if you're going to get 100% from a Brittany Ratcliffe, for instance, right?
Yep, took the words right out of my mouth.
If you're going to get 100% from Brittany Ratcliffe for 45, 30 minutes, and you need an equalizer, like, yes, I completely understand that you want Trinity Rodman out on that field. But at some point, I think as a coach, you have to say, would I rather have somewhere between 50 to 65% Trinity Rodman, right? 65% was the highest number I got out of someone in the press box about what she was feeling, or 100% Brittany Ratcliffe.
Especially because Brittany is such a closer. You know, whether the Spirit have been up or needed a goal, she is that player that you tap.
Yeah.
And to not see her touch the field, especially knowing how badly Trinity was fighting. Credit to her, though, because she definitely made the most of her energy. She picked her moments. She actually was involved in many of the Spirit's chances. She was sending in crosses.
I mean, again, 65% Trinity Rodman is still really good.
Yeah.
I don't want to argue with that, but I also just want to think about what was she offering that forward line? Because in a game where sometimes they felt too rushed, sometimes they felt too slow, the passes weren't really connecting across that forward line. Thinking about Casey Kruger had that sort of Schross in, and it was just like, you made that decision maybe like 2 seconds faster than I expect from Casey Kruger, who's so good coming in up the wing and contributing to the offense. So yeah, it was just, I don't know, it felt like the Spirit, for as much as they got in terms of shots, again, the efficiency was just where they struggled 100%.
You could kind of feel when the panic started to creep in as well, because a lot of balls were going out of bounds. Toward the end. I know that health has been a lingering concern for this team. I mean, you have to wonder how different that game would have been, even if they had had Croy or Andy or Ulesar.
Yes.
Let alone all three of them. And that's just three of those players.
Right.
The other way I think the panic showed up was in the last 15 minutes of the game, especially where you had a combination of course, throwing everything, including Aubrey Kingsbury at one point forward, and trying to draw fouls, which was, again, where we saw that question of consistency with officiating come into play.
Right. I mean, it did feel like they were trying to use every single tool in the toolbox, right? And it's just really tough because Orlando, again, has been such a complete team. I mean, the other part of this, too, just to look at it from the Orlando point of view, is we were in the press box sitting with those MVP forms in front of us. And I don't, obviously Barbra Banda scored the goal. I did actually vote for her as well because that is the Orlando game plan, right? And it was successful, and I think you should be like, yes, this worked 100%, right? But then the question becomes Emily Sams, Anna Morehouse, right?
Allie Watt.
Allie Watt had a great game as well. And so how do you reward those players for seeing that second half out where Washington was obviously, again, trying to throw everything in, trying to use every trick, again, the contact, whatever it was, right? And so you have to give credit to Orlando as well for seeing out that game and being kind of that complete team that we have seen time and time again.
Completely. I mean, we heard from Kylie Strom, we heard from Emily Sams in the mix zone after the game. Even Seb Hines, Anna Morehouse, they were not even worried, it seemed like, about those last 15 minutes because they've had so many games this season where they've had to close out those 15 minutes. Now, obviously, in a championship game, the stakes could not be higher. And there were some very close chances, even without the questionable fouls in the box. I heard a lot of throwing our bodies on the line being uttered in the post game, and that's definitely how it looked. But there was a part of me that wondered if they almost were cashing in on the luck of having such a solid defense throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, that did feel like the completion of a project, right? Like you've done all of the work, right? And then you just have to submit it for grading, right? And so that was really the vibe out of Orlando in that second half of just that unflappable, and I think that does come from Seb Hines, right? He seems like a very unflappable man. And so to have that sense of, we know how to see this game out, we have players like Marta who are just kind of throwing it all out there. Yeah, I mean, I do think the number one team won, right? It just feels like this is where we should have landed at the end of the season. As much work as the Washington Spirit did, as great as their season was, again, like it does not surprise us, I think.
No.
That we landed where we landed in this game.
The only kind of tension there is almost how linear this was, both in terms of the predictions, in terms of what logically made sense, because this is anything but a logical league where the team that's the favorite in the beginning of the season is a team that lifts the trophies at the end of it. That's the only thing that surprised me, was how linear this path was ultimately for the Orlando Pride. I mean, the accomplishment, and then Marta.
Yes.
Even if she was not on this team, what this club accomplished this season is, I mean, etched in history books. But to do it with and for, if we're all being honest, Marta?
Yeah.
Extraordinary, like capital L lore.
Right.
We're going to be talking about this game forever.
Right. I mean, I do think this game will probably be remembered as the Marta game. Even though, you know, like she had that chance, I want to say maybe early second half, and you could just feel the entire stadium be like, that's it. That's like, she's going to hit this. It's from coming in from Banda. Like, she's got this perfect. She puts it on her left foot, and then it does not. It's not on target. Yeah. It's not on target. And you're just like, that's not how that's supposed to go. But, you know, final whistle, falling to her knees, pointing to her mother. Again, I was like following her around post-game, and just like watching her take photos with her mom. I think it's her nephew that's in with her mom.
She had a whole family tree.
Carrie Lawrence and like her parents, like the big family photo. And so just to see her get to like soak this in, right, has been very special. And I do think that there was this kind of overwhelming sentiment from a lot of directions, unless you're a Washington Spirit fan, and maybe like a still lingering disappointment Kansas City Current fan. She did get some boos when she was introduced.
Several.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So, which I did expect. But yeah, I just think it was such a great night, and I think that's going to be like the gem of the content that comes out of this night for sure.
Oh, completely. I mean, what she has tapped into this season, she's spoken about what it meant to play alongside a player like Barbra Banda and what she has brought out of her, how she's made her have to play a little bit faster. She's been playing a little bit closer to goal than she has in previous seasons. It's been remarkable to see. And I mean, even when she lifted the trophy, she said that playing with this team makes me feel young again. Like, this is a special moment with a legendary player who it's not always that often that you get this kind of ending. Right. Not to say that her career is ending, but like to this story. I mean,
but she's got the trophy now, right? Like she's got 2 trophies out of this season, and she talked about that project so much. I do think it's also worth hearing from her. That press conference was also so special, just in terms of like her and Barbra Banda just staring at each other lovingly the entire time. But she had so many good answers, so let's actually hear one right now.
This moment gave me so many answers, you know. I've been in Orlando, like you say, like for so long, and then I see like players come and then leave, come and leave. We had like ups and downs. Some season we was okay, but not good enough, and I always ask myself what I'm looking for, because I'm still staying in Orlando, you know. I was not satisfied with all of the other seasons, and I feel like I don't want to leave this place without doing something really big, because there was like there in every single place that I'm playing. And tonight I had all of the answers that I'm, you know, asked for, and of course means so much. And then I need to give the credit for everybody. I mean everybody in this club, because every single day when we went to training, we see how much they care about, how much work they put, and the players that we have around make me feel like so good to keep playing this game, you know. I come to Barbra and talk to her like few times, but today I talked to talked to her and told her like, hey, big players show up in the big games.
Yeah.
And she did today, you know. She did for her, but she did for this team too, because it's like a winner, and then she wanna achieve so much goals, and I hope she can stay in this club like for so long.
No better way to end a segment than with a quote from Marta. She stays dropping gems. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to pan out from the game and think about what this championship means about the state of the NWSL, the growth of women's soccer, and we're going to have that conversation with Grammy award-winning LGBT activist and artist Melissa Etheridge. Melissa, as a Kansas City native, how does it feel to be here right now in this moment on the eve of such a huge game that's happening in your hometown?
It is so exciting. It is so thrilling. Coming from Kansas, actually Kansas, not just Kansas City. I lived in Kansas City in the 80s, but grew up in the 60s and 70s in Kansas. I would go to California and tell them, oh, I'm from Kansas, and they'd, make a Dorothy joke or something. That was it. Now there's so much more. Now coming here, looking at the stadium, looking at the investment that's been made in Kansas City in women's sports is so thrilling. I'm so proud. I wear, KC very, very, very seriously and very proud.
I mean, just in terms of, the growth here, the stadium popping up, the facilities, but I feel like music and sports can be intertwined worlds. What have you taken away from the growth of women's sports and seeing people like, Billie Jean King, right? Yeah. Kind of stepping up and being so impactful.
I met Billie Jean in the early 90s.
Wow.
And Martina, and they were the leaders back then, and they had big dreams. Billie always spoke of what can be done, and pay for women and getting players paid. She had always worked tirelessly for that, and to see these dreams finally coming true is so thrilling, because you speak it, you know it, you believe it, and then it just gathers steam, and it's such a thrill.
You've said in the past that you view your music as a safe space for queer folks.
Oh, yes.
And I'm sure you've picked up on a very similar vibe in the women's soccer world as being a safe space for marginalized folks in general, but especially queer folks. I mean, queer folks make up a huge portion of this community, both in terms of the players and the teams and the people who support it. How do you sort of see that intersection? Is it sort of like multiplication of that safe space?
Yes. When I came out in 93, the early 90s, I realized that the best thing that we could do is to be out, is to be your neighbors, your person in the family, your the person at work. That's I know a gay person. I know someone in the community, and seeing the power of that, and how now we as out people have had children. It is completely normalized, and I live in California, so I can say that. So it's it's no longer a thing that makes you different. It's just another great crayon in our crayon box, and to see. It seems, I could feel it as it started a few years ago in women's sports, that the thing everyone was going to have to get over is that, a lot of us are gay. A lot of us are LGBT, and you just kind of have to know that and feel it and be okay with that, and then enjoy. And I feel like just a couple of years ago, it finally broke through. And you see Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird, and you're like, wow, powerful. You see you see Abby Wambach kissing her, wife and girlfriend or whatever, and it's like, wow, there we are. And I live in a world, I have many, many gay friends, and so I don't think of that, but I know when I step out and I go do a show in Kansas, in Missouri, in these, in the southern states, I know that when I look out in the audience and see the large, gay crowd, it's like, this is safe, this is good. You can sing about it, you can remember, you can hug, and see all the straight people also, and we constantly say, hey, we love straight people. Straight people are great, and to know that everyone is comfortable around each other is so important, and you see that here.
Yeah. I mean, it was really funny when they announced. I had gotten the email and I posted it. I was just like, perfect choice, right? Because I feel like we've got the Kansas influence, we got the queer influence, like it's all coming together. When they reached out, were you just like, yeah, let's go?
That was a yes, absolutely. I knew, I saw this when they started it, and I knew the investment that was made, and that's so important. And when they started building this, it was so, and I remember having conversations with Billie Jean and how excited she was about it all and just what it meant. And I've been trying to get here. I was trying to come first opening night. I was trying to be, and my schedule, I had a show or something, so I was like, But finally that it worked out that I could come and do this was just
You just
so
got to claim it over Taylor Swift, right? Like, you got to be like, actually, Taylor, this one's mine.
This one's mine. You can have Travis, whatever. But this is, and I would not be surprised if she, came and supported us sometime.
Yeah. It's only a matter of time, it feels like.
It's only a matter of time.
Yeah. But that full circle moment feels so profound to have been, conspiring with people like Billie Jean King way back in the day, and to now see the fruits of your labor. I mean, as an activist too, and in addition to an artist, how has that sort of inspired or motivated you to continue forward in your art, now knowing that there are these vessels now that you helped create?
It's a funny thing when you're doing your career, and I can tell you, youngsters, it goes by fast, and you don't really realize as it's going by, and you don't know until years later you stop and I see Chapel Roan singing about kissing girls, and 100,000 people are watching her. I'm like, wow, we did it. There you go. And where I had to, I couldn't talk about sex with a girl. I couldn't sing it, but I could say I am it and just represent it. And now to see that, and it's the same. I was talking with Sue and Megan, and they were saying, the holes in the wall they used to play at, as all of us, and even though we don't get to, do it that way now, we know, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. The feeling, knowing, wow, it's because. I'm just dropping names left and right here.
Please.
As my friend Steven Spielberg once told me.
Okay.
I know,
Right.
it's a huge name. But he said that there are those, speaking about that, and it's a pretty brutal thing, but he said that are the ones that lay down on the barbed wire. So, speaking like a war reference, that there are those that go first so that others can go, and honored. And you start to feel like, hey, it was 100% worth it, more than that. And it is a pride that I take, and so that those that come after me can also feel that pride.
Is there anything special to you about just NWSL in general? I mean, obviously you've got the KC current loyalty. I'm guessing this is your first NWSL championship.
It is, yes. Well, growing up in Leavenworth, when I was a kid, we didn't have soccer in our community or in our schools. But there was the place called Fort Leavenworth, which was right next to us, and all these international kids, and they played this weird game called soccer. Well, they called it football, but I'm like, that's not football, And seeing that, and then over the years watching the Olympics, watching Brandi Chastain, and you're like, wait a minute, watching Mia Hamm, this is this game, and it grew. And then living in California, where you can't even drive on a weekend and not see billions of soccer families, and taking my kids to soccer when they were little, and being part of that. And it is a social event now, and the kids love it. Kids watch it with us, and I love having seen it become part of our society.
Well, Melissa, as a California native, I apologize for the Dorothy comment.
It's okay.
But I think it's safe to say that people across the country now have a different association to make when it comes to Kansas City, both in terms of what they offer soccer-wise and artistically. And the fact that you are now playing such a pivotal role in both of those things, I think, is only iconic. That's the only word.
Thank you. I love representing and supporting, and you will be seeing much more of me as I have been speaking with the Longs, and we have many plans. Yes,
all right.
Well, we'll have to invite you back.
I know.
Indeed.
We gotta bring you back
you
on.
haven't seen the last of me.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And now we're going to head to our interview with KC current midfielder Lo'eau LaBonta.
Lo, it's always good to see you.
Same.
Just in terms of this NWSL season, I mean, I remember being here in Kansas City for that first game, that first taste of the environment here at CPKC Stadium. Like, what has this year been like in this building with these fans?
Yeah, I continue to, obviously, I can talk all good things about my team, right? I love my teammates, love the organization. But I think the thing that topped it off and made us as good as we could be at home is the fans. Like, filling out the stadium for us every single home game, we just felt that. We felt that in the atmosphere. We felt that on calls, you know, when they start at kickoff and they all do the KC Baby chant, like, it just hypes you up. So I think the fans are truly what made us, like, just helped us get that extra edge in games.
And there's really something to be said about the consistency, too. I mean, that first game of the season was a banger, both in terms of what happened on the field and, of course, the energy that was evident even if you were watching the game on TV. But for fans and the club to be able to sustain that level of energy throughout the season is huge. And was that surprising to you at all? Was there...
I want to say at first I was like, oh, I love this. I was surprised because, you know, Kansas City has had a women's team for years. But when we got the support on that first game, it was like, oh, this can be something special. And then the team kept playing well. The team kept scoring. And so I think people immediately were like, oh, I need to come back. I need to see them do that again and again. And we, you know, I think we sold season tickets out like immediately when sale. So I was like, oh, these people are renewing for sure.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just I feel like thinking back to like really early days NWSL, the way that the atmosphere of games has changed so drastically. I mean, when you think about some of the games that you've played in where, I mean, I remember going to Sky Blue FC games where, you know, under 2,000 people were in that stadium, and it felt like a very special community that could be something so much bigger. But what have you seen from the growth, like this year in particular, having experienced the stadium?
Yeah, I mean, early days, right? We played at Rutgers. We played here on a baseball field. We were renting from Sporting KC. All those things, you know, play into why having our own stadium so special. Like, it means so much to the players who play here. I think players now probably want to come play here as well and be a KC current player. But it's the standard now, right? People come here and they're like, oh, I want to be a part of that. So I hope other teams buy into that and now set this up for their players, because these players deserve it. Like, not only the people that were here before, you know, the true pioneers of our league, seeing it now. Like, I think Almut Schult the other day just said, like, before I came here, I was thinking of retiring. And she was only here for a short time, and she was already crying in our exit meetings because she was like, it meant so much. Like, I've been a pro for so long, and to see an organization here and the players just love me and accept me immediately, like, that's truly meaningful. Like, you love to hear those things. That's when it becomes special. So I just hope now, I don't need the youth to go through the struggles that we went through. I want them to reap the benefits of what we fought for, and this is the standard now, and this is what every organization should have.
There is something really compelling about being able to set those precedents, because I think in women's soccer, nobody is interested in regressing. Once you have had an experience like even last year's NWSL Championship, there is no going back from that. And so while, unfortunately, the current will not be playing in the final, is there a sense of pride that you can still feel, no pun intended, about being able to host and be able to show the rest of the world what Kansas City has and can offer, knowing that that's also going to set a precedent for the next championship?
Yes, exactly. I mean, if I wasn't proud of this stadium and organization, I probably would have been on a flight already out to like somewhere warmer, you know, like my season's over. But to finally be on the other side of that, right? Everybody asks me all the time, do you love this stadium? But I'm always on the pitch, so I love the atmosphere. But now I'm gonna be on the other side and truly get to see from a fan's perspective what it's gonna be like on a game day, and especially the championship. It's gonna be so cool. Like, these two teams are amazing, right? Number 1 and 2 team, consistent all season long. They deserve to be in a final, right? So to be there and just be proud of how far this league has come and to watch these players thrive in that environment, I can accept that.
It seems pretty fair. It seems pretty fair. It's, I think it is, again, to talk about the growth, right? Like, I was at that first championship in Western New York, right? Between Western New York and Portland Thorns, and, Portland traveled with, I don't know, maybe 40 fans, and it felt like a miracle that first year. And now to have it be in this building, like, have you experienced an NWSL fan zone at a championship yet? Because, like, San Diego is popping.
Yeah. No, last year I was there for the final, did all this stuff around the final, and then I flew out and went and did in-studio stuff for the game. So I wasn't actually at the game. I was in studio to broadcast it. So I'm glad now I'll be doing the broadcast and everything again this year, but they decided to bring it to the game. And so it just works out perfectly for me.
Yeah, let's talk about broadcast too, because obviously 4 new media partners. I think there's been so much talk about that, like, putting this league in a position to become even bigger, right? And now being on both sides of the camera, right? But we've seen so many players move into that space, and you don't have to wait now until you're retired. But what is the media deal maybe opened up for players that folks might not be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've always said, to grow a sport, you need to have viewership, you need to have accessibility, and that's allowed it. I play in some of the games on the weekend, but now I get to watch all of the games. And I look forward to games on Friday, if I play Saturday, just to be able to watch the games on TV. And then I hear also voices that I know commentating on it and just being so knowledgeable. I love all that. I think it's a full circle moment. I think it shows, like, women supporting women, and I love seeing that out there. Again, unfortunate that I'm on broadcast, because I would much rather be on the field on Saturday. But it is cool because I love this league. I love these teams. For me to go out there and just be able to brag about everybody on it and just highlight them. I mean, that's your guys' job always, but for me to finally get to do it, I get to take the competition out of it. I'm not playing, and I just focus on the positives of these players. Like, I had an appearance last night with Croy Bethune, and I finally sat her down and I was like, look, I didn't enjoy defending you this year, but you are a force to be reckoned with. You need to know, like, yeah, you got Rookie of the Year, Midfielder of the Year, but you're going to do so much more. You have such a bright future. And to finally have those conversations with people, kicking the mess out of them in the game, it's so good to finally do that. And that's what I think this side of media gets to let you do.
And have you felt any connection between all of this increased investment, from the stadium to these, like, fortified media channels to make the game more accessible, and the quality of the soccer? Is it sort of akin to, like, oh, we have this new office, new workplace, so let's like go even harder because the field has been prepared for us to thrive? Are you feeling the effects of all of this investment on the field too?
100%. I always talk about when we got our training facility 2 years ago and we made it to the final, right? Yeah. That was the quickest turnaround I think anybody could have seen. I think we're in last place the year before that. We get this training facility, we go to the final. So that just allows you to be a professional. When we had our exit meetings for our team, I went to the staff and I was like, look, you made it easy for us to just show up and do our job. Like, that is all we have ever asked for as female athletes. Like, all we want to do is play the game. We're fighting for all these other things, but at the end of the day, we are professional athletes, and that's what we want to do. And when you have investment in a facility, in a stadium, and staff, high qualified staff, you can do that. And so that was probably why I am so proud this year, and you saw so much joy in the KC Current players because we were able to do that.
Yeah. All right, let's shift. We got to talk about the off season, because I think even before we get in the show itself,
Oh, I thought you were talking about my
No,
like what am I doing now?
no,
Oh, we're talking about the
TV
show.
show,
Oh, let's
yeah.
get into
TV
it.
show.
Final one drops.
But I think there is such a demand, right, for storytelling and every part of this infrastructure, right? Like I think the infrastructure of covering and content around women's soccer still very much a work in progress, right? But I think there is something so special about what Midge Purse has thought up and said, okay, like I'm gonna get all of these players to trust me and to trust me with their off season. I'm gonna put them on camera. Yeah. What was it like doing everything having to do with it?
Yeah, to be honest, I love the whole thing. It is weird like having to be mic'd up and cameras in your face all the time, but I am the same person. On screen, off screen, like on camera, off, like
that's not exactly separate.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Who would've thought?
So for me, it's not crazy, but it's just like, oh man, I gotta wear this battery pack like all the time. Like that's literally the only trade-off, right? But no, I was so happy to do it. Like I love Midge. I look up to Midge. What she's trying to do is amazing. Nobody has done this before because you get these storylines, right? You usually get storylines of U.S. national team players or whatever the league puts out or whatever each team puts out on their socials. And you usually just get the athlete. She said, no, we're going behind the scenes and I'm gonna show you the struggle. I'm gonna show you the highlights. I'm gonna take these baddies on a yacht. Like all those things it was so fun and rewarding. And I know she was doing it because she's like, you guys do need to like enjoy your off season, right? It's not just about the game. You should have fun. We can train hard and we can play hard off the field. And that's exactly what it was. And I loved it. And I hope I'm brought back every single season.
I mean, everything you touch, you like leave such a distinct stamp on. So it's hard to imagine you won't be back for another off season.
Right. Thank you. You hear that, Midge?
Manifestation.
Yes.
There has been growth in this game everywhere you look. And I'm curious what you envision as sort of the next level of growth. I mean, we're in a stadium right now that literally is built to expand, which I think is a perfect representation of that. But from your perspective, where else do you see opportunities for growth in the league? And where do you feel there's already sort of that momentum for growth?
Yeah, the momentum right there is already the investment, right? At the professional level. You have it with our team, you have it with the Spirit especially. I think they're making waves and wanting that for the other clubs. What I would personally like to see is the investment in youth. I want to see academies being brought to these teams because you see so many clubs and you see so many people asking like, what'd you do to get here? What'd you do to get there? And I think I think they do this in Europe a lot especially, and if we bring that here and start it at the youth, it's gonna make the pro teams even better. And I think, you know, with the Spirit, for example, all their rookies, all right, so it's showing you like the youth is there. Our league is making waves. Junior on my team, Claire Hutton now. I told her after her rookie season, now she will be called Claire.
I love
senior,
that.
either one. But the youth, like they're already that good and they didn't even have the experience going into it. So I think if we start academies in this league, our league is gonna be crazy good. Yeah. Not that it is already, it is very good, but now just think of that coming up.
It seems like a natural next step too now with the abolishment of the draft.
Yeah, that's wild. This offseason, not the show, the actual
the
NWSL offseason, I think it's gonna be so crazy. Everyone's in free agency now. Like that was a new thing, no draft. So I don't even know how we're gonna get the youth into these teams now. But I mean, San Diego did just make a signing. Pretty sure our team is already on it. Yeah. They're always on. I'm pretty sure at the final whistle, they were already starting for next season, the off season. They're so good here. But yeah, it'll be interesting this off season. I'm pretty sure you guys will cover it. I can't wait.
I mean, I think that's a perfect place to end. Yeah. We appreciate your time as always. We do. Like, championship weekend is such a special time. Yeah. I'm glad that you're getting to experience a slightly different side of it as much as I'm sure you would love to be on the field. But
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Next year.
Okay. Is this officially the end of the season now, Meg? Do we need to have like a retrospective?
Yeah.
Big picture takeaways? I mean, there has been so much that's happened this season, and I feel like in so many ways it's all sort of culminated in this weekend, both the room for growth of this league and all of the accomplishments that are very much worth celebrating.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still also always that kind of complicating factor of the NWSL. Like, the season has been so positive in so many ways, whether it's audience, all of the usual stats that we always hear at a championship. It hasn't come without challenges, right? Again, think about San Diego. I asked Commissioner Jess Berman about the potential impact of President-elect Trump's entire administration on what could happen with the league. So I think there are some bigger questions still waiting. We're waiting on NWSL expansion, right? Yep. We heard Cincinnati, Cleveland, Denver, final 3 markets. So we're done with games. There's still, I feel like, so much, right? Yeah. So much still has to happen. But I do think, championships are always really special in a lot of ways, and I think have a lot of big emotions around them. And it's a chance to kind of see everyone and hang out and do a lot of work, and I think also reflect. And so, I think it is special ending in this building and, starting the year in this building, and what KC managed to accomplish, what this league managed to accomplish. There's still a lot of work, but all in all, 2024, I mean, just a year of excellence, really, right? Orlando, Temwa Chawinga, Corey Bethune, the record-breaking, all those goals. We got some really good stuff this year.
So many pages of the memory book are going to be filled just from this one season. I mean, Marta.
Yes.
The partnership with Barbra Banda. The word that comes to mind most for me when I think about this season is actually expansion. But I also apply that to the fact that this stadium that we're standing in was built to expand. We are, as you mentioned, always thinking about expansion. I feel that the game itself has become more expansive because we're now having so many more players, as Barbra Banda mentioned, from African countries who are bringing a whole new style, flavor, dimension to the game, as we saw in this very championship. And that only feels like it's going to continue. And so it just feels like every championship is sort of an opportunity to measure the size of the vessel of all the things that are being poured into this league and all the things that will continue to be poured in this league. Because with every championship, it's setting a precedent. Whether we're talking about a team that went unbeaten in, 23 games straight, to a legend who is now able to lift not 1 but 2 trophies.
Right.
One thing that I think really the top 4 teams had in common was the level of investment into those teams. And
100%.
We've had this conversation.
100%.
Those investments each looked 4 very different ways.
Right.
But the fact that each of those ways led to them making it to the semifinals, Gotham, Kansas City, Washington, and of course Orlando, setting a bar. There is no going back from this.
Right. I think every year the bar gets higher, right? Every year we see how investment changes. And Orlando is not a perfect one-to-one on Gotham, right? But I do think not just in terms of the vibes of the team walking into media day and knowing oh, they're good, right? They are in a good spot. But I do think about the way that Orlando had that, even though it wasn't a direct worst to first season turnaround, they had that Gotham energy or the sky blue energy, right? And so you saw it work for Gotham. You saw that investment on the field, bringing in a former player as a GM. You think about Yael Averbuch, Haley Carter, right?
Yep.
There are some similarities, and I think there is now maybe a little bit of a blueprint for other teams to look at that and think, okay, why were they successful? Why were they able to make it to a championship and then win it? And so it's a really hard thing to do in this league, right? Marta, again, in the press conference, called it the best league in the world. I would like to believe Marta, right?
Yes, in most things.
Yes. So I think you have to keep raising the bar in order to keep making that claim. But week in, week out, I mean, we hear it from the players all the time. This is the best league in the world. And I think they like throwing that gauntlet down. But again, in order for it to be the best league in the world, you just have to keep putting money into it. And so, again, this championship was a really, really good example from the stadium, from Washington with Michelle Kang, to Orlando with the Wolf family. So much of it was a testament to investment.
Yeah, and again, we're only going to see more of this, more dimensions, because we know these clubs are not one size fit all in terms of the strategy, which I love. That's why I think the Gotham Pride example is so good, because those are two totally different markets. But the fact that even with the Pride, we saw that major improvement in how many fans they were able to get to their home games, which really came in handy for them in the postseason since they had all that home field advantage. Everything just feels like it's getting bigger and bigger. And while that does come with challenges, from growing pains to scale to, the price tags going up and the people who are going to be attracted. I mean, having Grant Hill and Magic Johnson at an NWSL final,
Also that whole box of former players too, just being super rowdy. It looked like a great time in that box.
Truly. And it's only going to continue.
Yeah.
Even looking ahead, we are now heading into our first NWSL season without a draft.
Yes, free agency time.
Free agency.
Yeah. Marta's price tag just went up.
Oh my God. I don't even want to think about it.
All right, we'll put a pin in it. We'll put a pin in it.
We'll put a pin in it. All right, we need to talk about what's happening next week, because the NWSL season is over, but if you have been paying attention, you know that there is still plenty of soccer to be played. The U.S. Women's National Team has a pair of friendlies coming up next week, and we're changing up the schedule just a little bit. But we will be covering as much of it as we can, as always. So be sure to listen to our next episode on Tuesday, when we will be discussing all things U.S. Women's National Team, starting with the roster, because we have not yet unpacked that.
I know. We got to go back.
So this coming week, look for an episode to drop on Tuesday, looking ahead to the U.S. Women's National Team's games against England and the Netherlands.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about. But again, this is why, we want to make sure that we're sending you off with an episode to listen during your Thanksgiving travels, if you're an American, which most of you are. So, we want to be with you for the holiday, talking women's soccer.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been so steeped in NWSL that I need to kind of get back into national team stuff, because there's been so much to cover. These games are going to be bangers, and we want to be with you along for the ride, as always. That being said, I can't believe we are officially in the NWSL offseason.
I know.
What a game that was. Orlando Pride, they did it. They did the thing.
Yeah, Marta forever.
Marta forever.
Yep.
Thank you for listening. As always, make sure you're following us on social media at TA Fulltime, because throughout the week we have captured some pretty incredible content, if I do say so myself. Stay tuned, because we all looked really fly tonight and took a photo that I'm very excited for you all to see. But what a game. What a game. I'm Tamerra Griffin. I'm joined by Meg Linehan, and you've been listening to Full Time with Meg Linehan. You can catch me, honestly, just reminiscing, probably replaying all of Marta's goals from this season on Twitter and Instagram.
Catch me napping soon. But I do want to say also, this was really the first time that we've ever all been in person to do the podcast. So Theo, our producer, Emily, our executive producer, Leah, our video person, it's just been very fun to actually all be in the same space and do it in this strange room in CPKC Stadium, down on the field, wherever we've been.
Amongst the glitter.
Yeah, some fun times. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you on Tuesday.